Guys, it's Mr. Kreider. Welcome to our first kind of official class in terms of not just being an introduction. I have two assignments for you to do this week, so make sure that you are checking into the classroom at least twice over the next week so you can finish up that work. Okay. So I have a couple things I wanted to go over with you so you understand them. These are terms that I use a lot in my classroom. And so I thought I'd share them with you so you can be successful on the assignments this week. One of them is, what is a derivative? In Latin class, we talk about derivatives, we talk about cognates. These are words that come from other words. So part of the reason that people really like to take Latin as a language is because they get to see where other words come from, where some of those fancy fun words come from. So the difference between amble and walk, because ambulo is a Latin word that means to walk. So these are things that I'm looking for. So when I'm talking about derivatives, and I want you to find derivatives from our vocab list, which, by the way, I posted already on the classroom. It's all animals this week. Is when you look at that is, say, you see a word on there, you're like, ooh, that looks a little bit like this other word. Take an educated guess and figure out maybe this word is a derivative of this word. So an English word, or in some cases, I have some Spanish knowledge, a Spanish word I know comes from a Latin word, and that's what a derivative is, okay? The other term that I said you could use is mnemonic. Mnemonic is sometimes something where you have a way of remembering. Mnemonic comes from Greek word for memory, so it's a memory aid, it's a learning device. So a mnemonic would be something that you learn maybe in science class. When you learn the planets, you maybe learn, my very educated mother just served us 9, I don't know what they do anymore, just 9? Because there's no more Pluto for a planet. But anyhow, it used to be, my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas for Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. Okay, and so they had it set up so that we had a memory aid. That's another thing. So if you have something to look at a word and go, "Ooh, that kind of reminds me of this," even though it's not an English derivative, you can write that down on your list for this week's work. Okay. And so what does that mean? So here I'm going to show you as best I can what this chart looks like. So here I've just kind of labeled my homework. I decided to go landscape on this because I feel like it's provides the most amount of space. So the Latin, English, and then either a derivative or mnemonic, and then an explanation. Now you want to make sure the explanation spot is wider than all the rest of them. In fact, if I were to do this over, I would probably make this one smaller because all you have to do is write an abbreviation of whether it's a derivative or mnemonic, okay? So for this one, I chose another animal that is not on your list, so you have an example one, right? So pulus, see, I'm getting the Spanish mixed up already. Pulus is a Latin word. It means like a small chicken. Eventually it meant a full chicken, like a hen, that you could eat. And so here, then I have the English definition. And then underneath that, I wrote down deriv, because there's a derivative. And then lastly, I explained my definition, why is it a derivative, or why is it mnemonic? How does it work for me? For this one, there's 2 ways. One, my family likes to go to El Rodeo a lot. Not sure if your family does, but it's a fun place and pretty affordable. So pollo is the Spanish word for chicken. I've learned that from eating lots of Mexican food over the years. But also, there was a show I watched on Netflix a few years ago where they had Los Pollos Hermanos on there. So Los Pollos Hermanos, that would be a derivative for that Spanish word. Again, pollos, pollo, Spanish singular plural versions. And those are things that I use. So I know it from a menu, and I know it from a Netflix show, okay? So that's the explanation part. Make sure you do that. Also, make sure you watch the video on Jason. It's a short video, about 5 minutes long. You can watch that later this week. And then also, I ended last time with the same phrase I tried to trying to kind of capture every week at the end of the little messages I'm putting out. Coronavirus delendus est. And somebody probably thought, what the heck does that mean? He said coronavirus, so there must be something going on. Well, in the Third Punic Wars is when Rome's fighting the Carthaginians. We see one of the famous statesmen, one of the famous politicians of the time, Cato the Elder, ended every one of his speeches with Carthago delenda est, which meant Carthage must be destroyed. And so I'm saying coronavirus must be destroyed. I feel pretty strongly about this. I'd like to get back in the classroom with you all. I'd like to have that full experience of being able to, interact, have a good time. So, in the end, Carthage does get destroyed. In fact, it gets completely destroyed. We never hear about Carthage really after the Punic Wars. And they were a superpower at the time. They went through, they burned the entire city to the ground, and then they did something worse. They put salt in their fields so they couldn't grow any plants. Well, that's all. Coronavirus delendus est. Ah!